Welcome back. Yes, indeed, They joins us next, a former presidential spokesman and a journalist. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chairman.
Well, after several waits, FEC has held, and so many were wondering, okay, well, what's actually going on? Also interesting is the fact that now it's going to be on Mondays.
Yes.
No longer midweek.
Wednesdays, yeah.
How significant is this? I mean, why was it always on Wednesdays and now that it's going to be on Mondays? Was it stipulated that, look, it has to be on Wednesday? What were the reasons, though?
Yeah. Okay, so like I've said before, the Federal Executive Council is the president's court. And, you know, if you look at what the Constitution says, it's essentially an advisory body. And then the Constitution says that it should be a regular meeting. It doesn't say that it has to be weekly. It didn't dictate the frequency, you know, but it does say that it has to be a regular meeting, and it is an advisory board to the president. Look, the president has enough powers in the Constitution to take actions as the executive head of government for executive matters. So he doesn't really have to listen if he doesn't choose to. But of course, the Constitution gives you an opportunity to say, look, you know, you have ministers, bring them around regularly. So really, it's up to the president to determine how frequent. And that's my point. You know, although we've had a tradition where it is done weekly, and I guess that started during the military, as far as I can recollect, and of course, all through 1999. You know, but there is no specific stipulation that says that it has to be weekly or it has to be Monday or Wednesday. But I guess this president has chosen to do it on Mondays, and clearly he may not be interested in doing a weekly meeting. And I think that is entirely up to him. Like I said, the FEC is his court. You know, it's different from NEC, for instance, the National Economic Council. If you sit in both meetings, you will know that in the NEC, you see quite a bit of crossfire because you have governors who are who have executive powers in their own state coming together to meet representatives of the federal government, the vice president, the central bank governor, finance minister, and they are always very free to say whatever they choose to say, really, because they're also executives in their own right. But in effect, you have people who work for the president. So oftentimes, FEC meetings are normally very dull. You know, everybody is agreeing. Very few people have the courage to even disagree with their colleagues, not talk of the president.
So it's not like what, a rubber stamp body?
Well, you know, to the extent that it is advisory, you know, from my experience, I've not seen a lot of spark in FEC compared to NEC, especially, you know, where you have a president that is almost larger than life, you know, and everybody is just happy to say, well done, sir. Now, I have seen ministers who have shown some courage, you know, and some seriousness, but by and large, FEC is just a place where everybody comes to say, well done, sir. So that's right.
What is, like Ranka did it right, so what is this thing we hear that they say, well, since it's Wednesday, it gives them time to go prepare their memos on Mondays and Tuesdays and come with it on Wednesday. But Monday might be a challenge. Does this suffice?
No, I mean, one of the things that I find interesting is the extent of latitude that people get in public service, you know, which you will never even talk about in the private sector. Look, it doesn't matter, you know, even if all you have is 24 hours to prepare a memo, you know, you just go right and do it. You know, this very idea of, oh, you need 2 days, you need 4 days. Look, the work of public service is serious sacrifice, and only people who are willing to commit seriously should be there. So whether it's Monday or Friday, or if you get whatever notice, if you are there, you are supposed to serve. I think it was Mark Wade that was making the point yesterday that when you're in government, you serve. It's service. It's not...
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. It's not a place where you sit down and say, hey, I need all the time. Look, we have very serious problems. We have dire challenges in this country. And that's why we keep on saying that, look, it's important, you know, to keep government at their toes.
So tell us about this. Pardon me, Mark. What is it that you can tell us? Because we especially when we saw the, don't know how to describe it now, the scenario in the Ministry of Works and those civil servants who appear to be above the law, saying, well, no, you can't lock us out. And many didn't understand the dynamics because they in the private sector thought, if you're working in a firm, there are rules, you stick to it. And if by the way, they represented the president, the ministers in those ministries. And so if they are seen to have flouted the rules of service in the civil service, then they should draw the line. So the attitude of members of the civil service, we have some people too who have been here saying that they don't see a lot of that kind of agility and seriousness that the work requires in the public sector. What do you know about how they function? Is it, what, close to what people have described it?
Well, you know, I think the raw fact is that we do have a very important need to reform the civil service, you know, and there are several factors, you know, that explains that. Even the kind of pay that is given to civil servants is, as far as I'm concerned, is a joke. You know, you make somebody a director, you know, it looks and decides on files of millions and tens of millions, at times billions, and then the guy is handing 400,000 naira, you know. So there are a lot of reforms. Now, in terms of discipline also, in terms of the kind of seriousness that you need to bring to the job, there is a need for a lot of reforms. You know, I have interacted with civil servants who are up to par, clearly, but there are quite, you know, a number also that you see this attitude of slothfulness. So it's a question of what kind of structure do you put in place, you know, and then what kind of reward system, what kind of disciplinary system that you put in place. And we've done it before in this country, you know, but that is one area that I believe we really need to sit down as a nation, as a people, to say what kind of civil service do we want. I mean, look at the United Kingdom, for instance. Their best students coming out of Oxford, coming out of Cambridge, are the ones that end up in the civil service, you know, and they are well paid. So the quality of what comes out is quite connected to the fact of their training and their exposure and the reward system. We need to bring back that kind of situation. And we've had it before in this country. So there's a lot of work. There is a lot of work to be done in the area of people who could be slothful, you know, but there is also a lot of work to be done in the area of bringing in people, of attracting the best, you know, and rewarding them appropriately.
Well, I mean, just to also add that, I'm sure you must have been a bit shocked as to what exactly happened with the Ministry of Works, you know. I was away then. You know, just listening to what had happened, I had my mouth agape, like, what, really? Anyways, we've been told that there was more to it than met the eye. But yesterday was another situation whereby an appointee of the president, I think it was to NIPOST, was denied entry by members of staff who worked there, blocking the gates and saying that, no, we want the person who had been there before to be reappointed again. I mean, there are questions as to, okay, do you think that there should be more consultations held before the president makes an appointment? Or do you think that, you know, members of staff could really have a point, especially if they see that maybe there's been progress made under a headship somewhere, and maybe they think that that progress might be derailed?
Yeah, so there are a few things that is happening. And I think we have to be very clear to try and call it what it is. The powers of a president to appoint to executive offices under the Constitution should never be limited or hindered by anybody. You know, whoever is the president has been elected, so he has taken an oath to the office, so he has the authority. So the president does not have to go and consult with the workers of a place and say, this is the kind of person that I want to bring. So it's something that is out of the ordinary for people to say that the person that the president has chosen can't enter. That is quite a bit of a stretch. But I think the matter was sorted out. Now, but I also think that it's important for the authorities to have, I don't know, maybe there's need for some kind of training or some kind of brushing people up. Look, a minister said yesterday, for instance, that she was going to sue the United Nations. You know, first and foremost, you know, the United Nations has immunity against local jurisdiction. You cannot sue the United Nations. And if you do have a grudge so much as you expressed, you know, what about the Foreign Affairs Minister? Why don't you go to the foreign affairs minister or the budget and planning minister, those ministries that deal with international agencies. So you see that there's a bit of, and of course you had a situation of the former NIPOST Postmaster General coming back after a presidential statement that said that, there's a new guy, and then you come back and made NIPOST to say that you've been reinstated. It's a bit of chaos that the president has to fix.
We'll continue from that particular point because we need to go to break now, so don't go away. Okay, welcome back. So let's pick up on that particular point. So the scenario, as we understand it, is that NIPOST tweeted that the man had been reappointed.
Yeah.
And then there were images of them dancing, celebrating that he's been reappointed. And this was after the presidential statements of new appointments to NIPOST.
Yeah.
So in that kind of scenario, you then wonder, of course, several people try to get across to the presidential spokesperson Nigeria to find out what's going on here because there's only one confirmation. And so when NIPOST now tweets something contrary to the statement that had been issued by the president, then you see the former man dancing and celebrating. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and one has to say this with a bit of caution, but there's quite a bit of chaos, that is going on. And I think the president has to come in and weigh in on this in a very firm way. I mean, all of this kind of stuff just got to stop. And you don't know on what authority the man went back, actually on a weekend, to get the NIPOST handle to say that he's been reinstated, and then he goes in and you see a motley crowd, welcoming him after a presidential statement has gone out. And then I think, thankfully, yesterday, I read reports that the presidency has waded in, and then they announced, the person who was announced by the presidential statement has actually resumed. But there are quite a few other, chaotic stuff that we have spoken about. So I think the president really needs to give authority, perhaps to the chief of staff or the secretary to the federal government. Somebody needs to be able to rein in very strongly against all this chaos.
Because in that kind of scenario, there are several things, several questions really, because how does that agency, it just appears as though, look, if that position, if the man loved it so much, how come we didn't see the, of course, very groundbreaking, fantastic changes in NIPOST if you wanted to continue staying? And because the new person who's coming there has got to really go in there and do some house cleaning. Because those chaps who got one day and then tweeted, then the man himself, who knows, maybe he was the one who even told them, hey, go ahead and let's orchestrate this. Does that then speak to how people take communication that comes through from government? Because that's one, for instance, because there are a few others which we hope to highlight here. In that kind of case, what kind of steps should be taken to ensure that those kind of things don't happen again?
I think it boils down to consequences. So you can't have a situation where the president has instructed a statement to be made regarding appointments. Those statements that come out of Villa, it's about the most authoritative. It doesn't get more authoritative than that. So you can't have a situation where somebody is trying to undermine that using an agency of government, which is under the presidency. There has to be consequence. So it's important, for whoever is going to do that. Like I said, it's probably the Secretary of the Government of the Federation or the Chief of Staff. Some of the people on the team of the president have to get an handle on this thing and say that, how did that happen? And then once you find that, there must be consequence. And that's how to deal with it.
Because could they be taking a cue from what they saw with Ministry of Works and thought, okay, well, maybe we could try something similar? Yeah, you never can tell.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of drama. I don't know whether you also saw the case of the CAC, the Registrar General, who was removed, and that kind of, obituary kind of a post that went viral. and people even also going somewhere to dance, that the man is gone. Now, that one is neither here nor there, but you see quite a bit of this excitement and some kind of the civil servants really, almost overreaching, but
they appear to be what, untouchable?
Well,
no one can. It appears as though I can do anything and get away with it.
Well, it's up to the people that have the authority to ensure that things are done orderly. Now there are also like in the case of Governor Umahi, who actually even apologized. Ultimately there are those who said that, okay, yes, of course, you could set the rules. I mean, the rules are set as to the time of arrival, but I think their own argument was also that they were not informed. And you say, hey, but it's already, everybody knows the time that you're supposed to arrive. So I just think that this might also be part of the kind of civil service reforms that we have to do. But it has to be, we have to consider all the sides. So yes, while we are seeing all these laxities, in terms of discipline and stuff like that, we also have to take care of the area of their welfare and the kind of reward system in the service.
Do you think that there should be consequences, though? I mean, for some of these confusions which were obviously avoidable. For instance, in the issue of appointment, if you were not reappointed, for instance, and you got an agency of government to tweet that you were reappointed and you creating some sort of drama around it, do you think that there needs to be consequences for that sort of behavior?
I believe so. And it's very important for the president. This is something that the president should be concerned about. The president shouldn't allow a situation where people will say, after your spokesperson have gone out, I mean, look, the spokesperson is the spokesperson. That's why whoever is the spokesperson's got a job, is to say, this is what the president said to the public. So you shouldn't allow a situation where somebody else goes to say that I've made a call to somebody, I've spoken to somebody, who said,
undermine.
Exactly, who said that has been changed. If there's going to be a change,
it will come from the spokesperson.
It must come back. And we've had instances even under this government. Remember just one day before the inauguration of the Executive Council, we had some tweaking of the ministries. I mean, so the spokesperson came back and said that this is what was going to happen. So in this particular instance, the spokesperson didn't say anything. The presidency was quiet, and then you had a government agency, a NIPOST Twitter handle, or X handle now, the name has changed, to say the man has been said that there must be consequences. I agree entirely. That is the only way to stop all this kind of...
I think they'll need to look into the activities of that, the outgone Postmaster General. Let's find out, why does he want that position so much? Why is he so... What's that? Juicy, as they say, because getting people to tweet.
NIPOST now one of those juicy ones.
He wanted that thing so bad, and we didn't see that much. Well, I guess they will look into all of those and ensure that, look, that there's got to be law and order.
He just wanted to continue to go to work.
By all means, he just really wanted to. Well, maybe he should go back to the private sector where he came from and see. Well, I don't know if he came from the private sector. I stand corrected. But Ayo's got some questions on this matter. We still have a lot of grounds to cover as well. There's palliatives too, how state governors are handling all of those. What's going on with that? The social register, so many questions. But Ayo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I think, my question to Mr. Conde is pretty much going to lay a background for those other issues because they border on civil service, they border on governance. So, Mr. Conde, one of the things that we've seen in all the examples that have been given, the Umahi experience, the Odeyemi experience, and the CSC experience that you also mentioned, borders all comes down to the civil service. There is such an individual or an office as the head of service. There are such offices as the Office of the Permanent Secretary in each of these agencies. There is the Office of the Secretary of, whatever ministry, department, or agency. Whenever the top guy in an agency of government is removed, the person is asked to hand over to the next most senior person, meaning hand over to the civil service before a substantive person is installed or rather announced back into that office to head that institution. Speak to the issue of the civil service. You've talked about consequences, and I'm wondering whether or not the civil service system doesn't have a consequence system within itself for such things to not happen in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing. The head of an organization is appointed by whoever is prescribed by law or by the Constitution to appoint such a person. So where we find ourselves now, when employees of the president are saying no to the president, what should the civil service have done, or what is missing in the civil service that opened that gap in the first place?
Very important point that you've made, Ayo, especially regarding the head of the Federal Civil Service. And you are right. You know, I think the initiation of the consequence, whatever our consequences that will follow, ought to start from the head of the civil service. And, you know, it's becoming something close to a trend. You know, now, I had said that we have to do an overall civil service reforms, you know, so I've made that point. But, you know, to your point, yes, the consequences ought to be initiated from the office of the head of the Federal Civil Service, you know, and it's somebody that I know wouldn't tolerate the kind of behaviors that we have seen. So we should be expecting, you know, that right from that office, you know, we got to find out what is going on, and, you know, a stop has to be put to it. And the way to do it is to investigate what has happened in all these instances, especially you know, the case with the Minister for Works, even though the Minister for Works, being a politician, has already apologized. But I think it's important to look at it, look at all the sides. And then this particular case of somebody who had been removed, you know, getting the agency to announce that he's been reinstated, you know, only for us to find out on the Monday that, no, actually, you know, the new appointee is in charge, you know, and some other dramatic instances that we've had. You know, is it also right for civil servants to be rejoicing, you know, dancing outside of the place? Well, I guess people may see that it's a freedom of expression, you know, but to the issue of the reinstatement, you know, somebody coming out to announce their reinstatement, and then people trying to avoid being held accountable for coming late, you know, those things have to be looked at right from the desk of the head of the civil service. But it's important, you know, because we've got to balance it that, look, there's a lot that we need to fix in our civil service. The structure has to change. You know, we have to change the orientation. We have to find a way that we can attract the best. And when the best are in there, we have to find a way to keep them.
Well, speaking to that, it speaks to also the function of collaboration and ensuring that things are done properly. Well, Chamberlain mentioned the fact that we need to talk about palliatives. And it leads me to just one question on that before we go back to him. And that is the fact that it was the president, the presidency, the federal government that announced palliatives and also announced 5 billion naira to each of the states. Now, we've been getting reports in Ogun State. I think we even highlighted that, and it's on our website, channelstv.com, that something is happening that the community development associations are not happy about. But at the end of the day, it was the president that made the announcement, or the federal government that made the announcement, and it's the states that are supposed to implement these things, and they have been so mobilized. Do you think there should have been, I mean, speak to us as someone who has been within, especially, you know, working with the vice president at the time. Do you think there should have been some kind of monitoring system from the federal government when these allotments were made to the states? Because people are wondering whether or not these palliatives are even getting to the people in the first place.
Yeah, so there are at least 2 or 3 mechanisms for monitoring. So there is a monitoring unit when we were there in the villa, okay, that their job is to monitor and evaluate within the presidency, you know, whatever it is that has to be monitored. And then there is also in the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, there's also an embedded, you know, monitoring and evaluation unit, you know, or department actually in that ministry. And of course, in the states themselves where these things are being distributed, you know, I imagine that there will also be monitoring units. Now, but I think the bigger issue here is that when we talk about the palliatives, it's important to keep an eye on who these palliatives are meant for. So if you're distributing rice, I don't think you meant to give rice to people who live in estates. That's not the palliative that they need, just like the video that went viral when the man was saying that, look, we have about 67 families in this estate and we just have a bag of rice. So something went wrong. If we are trying to implement these palliatives in a one-fits-all system, one window for everybody, it won't work. I think the intention of the president is to ensure that people that are I think the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, so those are the people that need the kind of thing like rice. I think to the more important point is that, look, so where are the CNG buses? What is happening? Since June, May 29, when the president announced that the subsidy was gone, and now we've had June, July, August, September, 4 months, Mr. President. Where are the buses? Well, it's important to communicate with the people.
I think we'll come back to that message about the palliatives. There was a letter from the Ogun State, which I think they responded. Is it Ogun State government or somebody else in the state government?
Somebody in the state government claiming that this was the governor's response. I'm going to see if we can quickly locate that particular letter and maybe read it in the course of...
Yeah, we'll get to it much later. But the thing about that is this. Now that money has been announced, and we've consistently have tried to find out from the states what template is being used for this distribution, what documents, what platform, because one would have thought that since NEC said they didn't like the previous register, that they would then go back and develop a proper one, according to them, proper in quotes, which can then be used to probably in the future develop something that we can call social security and then get so many people across board. But today, part of what you highlighted, we don't know how we can access that, if it does exist at all. What have the states done with this 2 billion naira that has been released? Because eventually they will get to release the other 3 billion.
Yeah.
Should the 2 billion be, in terms of how they utilize it, should it be a condition precedent if they're going to release the other 3 billion to them? So there are several questions. So could you talk to us about some of this? What have you found? What should we actually be looking out for to ensure, like Pato, you highlighted, it goes to the people who need it? And above all else, the money is actually utilized and not pocketed.
Yeah. So I think, to be fair to what the federal government has laid out, so there are a number of things that we have had to be done. So the 5 billion, to each of the states from which 2 billion has been given is one. It's just one, but of course, we all of us have billions and we focus on that. There are other things that has been promised. That's why I raised the issue of the compressed natural gas, the buses. That is such a big deal. When we talk about subsidy, we talk about fuel subsidy. So the prices of fuel has gone up. The transportation cost has gone up. People have to buy, spend more to fill their cars. That's why those CNG buses are so critical. That's why they are so. It's a big deal. And yes, the government has, given us announcement. This is what we're going to do. And I think they said even thousands of those buses. Kudos to that. We need to be told what has happened. Government has to come out and give us a timeline, so that people can also plan. And there are some other things, that they have also planned. Of course, some of the wage award to labor and some of the other things that has been announced. But I think your point, what is important, as in all the cases, is that government, especially the federal government and then the state government, the issue of coordination, we cannot overemphasize it. The issue of coordination is important. Otherwise, you can have a situation where the president or the governor really wants to do things properly, but if there are no effective coordination mechanism that goes down to the grassroots, and that's where the problem is. Okay? That's why, for instance, we have, people sending rice to people who live in estates. It is because the coordination is not effective all the way down. So somebody just sits down and said, you know what, okay, let's give this to all the local governments, but hey, there are some local governments where they are not, they're not considered to be vulnerable, People living in Lekki, for instance, cannot be treated the same way with people that are living in Shomolu.
Doesn't mean they don't get palliatives.
No, no
such thing for them.
There we have other things, in the larger picture. I don't think it's everybody that will get a palliative because some people can take care of themselves, really, if you look at the income levels. And the point is that you cannot have a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, but even if those people don't get palliatives, they are also affected by the price. There should be something that cuts across board. So that even if it has to be companies, I know they spoke about taxes, something has got to happen. Yeah. Because if you say these people can take care of them, they are paying taxes, which are being used to develop other things. Yeah. There has to be something.
I agree entirely. And I think to your point, I think there was a time, I think it was when Mr. Dilalaki was in charge of communication in the villa, he did come out and announce a raft of tax holidays and other measures, that have been in plan for everybody, even people in the business. So the important thing is that we need to come back to those things. I said, okay, we announced this 30 days ago. This is where we are on it. Look, one of the things that we have to emphasize is that public communication is such a big deal. But in our country, a lot of things are still done in an opaque way. And it's not helping the government to earn the trust. And this is the experience that I have even had in my 8 years that, look, we have to do more in terms of public communication. We are dealing with over 200 million people.
Just to talk about public communication, I think it's very important to say that on its official handle, the Ogun State government responded to that particular incident. Okay. And they're talking about palliatives and fifth columnists. According to them, the sack of rice was actually meant for a widow within the community, which the LCDA chairman was supposed to present. He was supposed to present that sack of rice to the widow in his community. But I think it also raises questions as to the engagement levels. I mean, if the chairman wasn't aware of how things were being distributed and all of a sudden somebody goes to him and says, this is a sack of rice, there'll be questions about the communication. Was he the one who identified that vulnerable member? How was she identified? And what was communicated to him when he was given that sack of rice? Absolutely. So these are some of the questions that will, but the Ogun State government on its own official Twitter handle has also responded to that particular video.
So what we'll do is next time out, we'll take a look at public communication across board, states and federal government, and we'll see what we can point out from the textbooks to the reality. Bolalu, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's see how much of the messages we can take now. It has to be breakneck speed. This one coming from Kenneth about the new AFCC chairman. He says, though there are lots of arguments over the appointment of AFCC heads and the constitutional questions that follow, the most relevant argument is how successful has a fight against corruption been under the leadership of the, quote, constitutionally qualified heads of the agency. So I guess you can see the rest there. That's from Kenneth.
And you have a number of other, this mail too from Dixon Eckhart talking about the cost of governance. He says, I use this medium to congratulate the newly sworn-in ministers, but their portfolios kept surprising me and many others. The humongous expansion of the Federal Executive Council members to 48 ministers, while giving ministers of state to almost all the ministries to further increase the cost of governance, is, to say the least, unnecessary. The Ministry of Youth was a department under the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and if it's being carved out, why should it have two ministers in such a ministry? So on and on that mail goes. You can also see it right there, but we're almost out of time. We also see tweets from Mr. Festus Akinboyewa and Pastor Law Alpha Cross, Taiwo Olokbade. Your mail is also acknowledged.
Maybe we'll try and see how we can take that Taiwo and several other people. Prof, for all of you, we'll see what we can do tomorrow. But we do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Chamberlain also.
Well, thank you so much. Don't forget about that pot. Own a pot, own a patch of land, grow something you can eat. Thank you for watching. I'm Amaya Makinde. Chamberlain, I'll be calling your manager.